Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here in this panel. I know it's siesta time, so probably everyone is super tired. So I just wanted to start at this panel before introducing these amazing speakers, asking you just a simple, quick thought experiment. So I want everyone to think of a company, any industry. Do you have it all in mind? Yeah? OK, now I want you to imagine this company as a person. And I'm going to ask you 3 specific questions. So would you imagine if this was a person? Would you enjoy grabbing coffee with this person, with this company? Would you interact and would you introduce them to your friends? Would you even enjoy spending 2 hours with this person? Well, I know here you're all founders and innovators and corporate innovators, so I want to ask you, let's turn this question to your own company. Can you say yes to these questions? Well, this is not just a personal preference experiment. It's about asking you a shift that we're seeing in today's consumer market, where consumers are no longer just buying products and services. They're investing in the values and the actions of every single company. They are making sure these companies value social and environmental and cultural impact. And I think that's why we're here. We're here to talk about social enterprises, these mission-driven organizations that, yes, have innovation at its core, that they are fostering and growing and empowering communities. But at the same time, they're making sure they are profitable. They are making sure that they can be sustain in the long term. So I'm very excited to be moderating this amazing panel with these amazing speakers. First, we have Aline Sara, CEO and founder of Natakalam. She connects displaced people with remote work opportunities. And I mean, she's doing an amazing job since 2014, so thank you for coming. Then we have Nuno, CEO and founder of GoParity. GoParity is, well, I think everyone should know, a crowd lending platform where you invest in projects that are cultural, social, and environmentally impact. And Nuno and Pablo Valencia here, we have Pablo. He's the managing director at Q Impact, in an investment fund where they invest in small and medium enterprises that are focusing and they are mitigating and solving solutions on the social and environmental landscape. So thank you, everyone, for coming here. And I think I have one question to start off. So what's one thing that no one talks about social entrepreneurship that you think it's very important to highlight? Anyone can start.
I know Pablo has a good suggestion, so Pablo should start. I don't want to steal his point. So.
So when we talk about social enterprises, at the end of the day, they are enterprises. So there's a lot of personal involvement. In the case of social companies, typically the CEOs and the leaders of these companies take most of the burden, and they do not disconnect. So a typical problem of social companies is associated with burnouts and with a lot of stress, because there's no disability to disconnect, and you take all the problems home. So there's a lot of initiatives that surround social enterprises in order to try to tackle and mitigate this problem that is becoming overall a big problem, but especially in the niche of social enterprises. So I would say that's one of the key things today, talking about mental health and specifically about the leadership in these type of companies.
Amazing. Mental health and burnout, definitely something that we were highlighting just before we joined. And I think, Aline, you were saying something very interesting around it. I don't know if you want to share a little bit more about what is one thing that no one talks about in the social entrepreneurship.
Well, I would say one of the, being a social entrepreneur means you're on a constant, perpetual tightrope balance between profit and at the very least sustainability, and your impact. And every step of the way, unlike a traditional startup that is very for-profit, focused on just the profit side of things, for social entrepreneurs, if only the decision could be that easy. And it's not always that evident and clear. If you choose to cut something off because you feel like it's costing you too much, you might actually really cut down on the impact. So I think that's really one of the big challenges for social entrepreneurs. And I think the term social entrepreneurship is thrown around a little bit loosely, and we don't always talk about the breadth of impact. There's a bit of an obsession around depth of impact. But I can give away, 100,000 blankets, and the number is impressive. But it's much more, for example, than when you compare it, for example, with changing the lives with sustained income to 100 people, for example. So these are really difficult nuances to navigate.
Amazing. What about you, Nuno?
Yeah, before my point, I would just add something to what Pablo said, that we also feel that not only in impact founders, but also on the teams, because the people that join, and that's honestly that's one of our biggest competitive advantages when hiring, is that we do get to attract a lot of talent just because we are a mission-driven company. So a lot of people have like this idealized image of GoParity in this case, and they really want to work for us, and they will say, I don't care, I will lower my salary, I'm in it for, and of course we don't want no one to lower their salary, but in the end, mostly everyone really goes the extra mile, and sometimes to an extent that is not okay anymore. And as a leader, then you also have the obligation, the moral obligation to say, listen, it's not okay to be working at this time. It's not okay to get emails from you at 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. This is not okay. And I feel like this is happening. And one of the things that we don't talk enough about it is if we look at fundraising, for example, there's a lot of talk about impact funds, but how patient are they? Because one of the things that I find really that is scarce in this field is that, of course, you do have to track your impact metrics as an impact founder and as an impact startup, but then you also have to abide by the other regular metrics of VC. So in the end, is it just like an extra burden, or are you actually a more patient kind of investor?
That's very interesting. If I could ask you, just following up on that, what are 3 things you look into someone when hiring into, for example, GoParity?
Well, of course, the first and most important thing is to feel that the person is genuinely aligned with the mission of the company. And I never ever ask the question like, what drives you or something. I just try to find questions around that. And I can give you a really cool example. The other day, I always interview, like I do always the final interview in any hiring process at GoParity. And I was interviewing this girl, actually from Peru.
Oh.
And then in the end, I said, so how would you describe your relationship with money? Because we're an impact fintech. So,
okay.
And the reply was, money? I like it as long as I'm proud of the way I made it. And it was like, wow.
Very good
This is
answer.
This is GoParity in person.
Well, I'm happy and glad she was Peruvian. So, but Aline, I wanted to ask you, how do you think social enterprises can get us closer to social justice and fostering human connection? That is something that you've been working since 2014, and maybe you can walk us through a little bit of that.
Sure. So just to give you a bit more background on what we do. So Natakelem is born out of a context of war, out of the Middle East, Lebanon specifically, and it was a response to the Syrian refugee crisis. I don't know how familiar everyone here is with forced migration, but today over 110 million people are forcibly displaced from their homes. That's a massive amount of people. I think it's a few times the size of Spain, so that's a large number. And basically, people will flee a conflict zone, and when they get to a neighboring country, they have really no future ahead. They're very often stuck in limbo with no right to work, no right to buy a house, no right to really restart their life. So the idea was with Syrians in Lebanon how to ensure that they feel a sense of purpose and worth and not fall into depression, violence, starvation, by giving them an opportunity. And the answer to that was the digital economy. So while the Syrians in Lebanon could not work locally, they could work in the digital global economy. And Natakelem is an American company. And so today we hire refugees and conflict-affected communities from around the world who teach their languages online, who come into classrooms or corporations as guest speakers and inspiring speakers about their plight as conflict-affected communities, and we also deliver translation and interpretation services. And everything is, again, through people who are in conflict zones or forcibly displaced, and through the digital economy. So from a human rights perspective, what that is effectively restoring is the basic fundamental right to work that every human should be enjoying on this planet. So I think, coming from the humanitarian and human rights sector, there has been a tendency to look at things a bit more in the traditional way. And with the startup mindset, there's enormous progress we're able to make because we look at solutions from a more sustainable perspective. So Netacalm is a market-based solution. We leverage technology more. We think more disruptively and innovatively. And this actually liberates us from being imprisoned by donors who are a little bit unreliable. Donations change a lot depending on the crisis, the conflict. And so effectively having a self-generating revenue model, I would argue, enables us to really bring in human rights and humanitarian support in a much more reliable, sustainable, independent way.
I mean, that sounds amazing, and congratulations for founding this and making this come true. And I mean, Paula, I just wanted to ask you, you're in the Investment Social Fund. What are some strategies that you think are the most necessary or important when retaining and bringing new investors into this field?
So we launched Q Impact to try to develop track record and demonstrate that you can align both impact and profitability, and with that, try to create this asset class. If you think about today, there's a tiny percentage of the funds that are allocated to social companies or investing with impact. There is no track record. The concept is pretty much built in the last 15 years, and there's no such an asset class. So it's a small fraction of the fund assets under management that are allocated to these strategies. So when we created Q Impact, we decided let's help mature companies to become regional champions and also solving the main social and environmental challenges, and with that demonstrate that both things are possible. Create a track record and then appeal to the large pockets. So at the end of the day, we can change in a way the economy, the way decisions are taken, put that impact lens, and invest comfortably in assets like the ones we manage without sacrificing profitability, but that in this extra vector of impact, no? And think what our money is doing beyond just pure financial benefit. And that's the way to attract this at the end of the day is basically the first thing is being profitable. We have to compete on the same terms, as you were saying, with the traditional economy and bring this additional impact lens. But the most important concept is demonstrate that you can be as profitable as any other alternative investment and bring it with facts. So that's what we're trying to do.
That's amazing. I mean, demonstrating that you can be profitable also goes along the idea of Go Party, that not only you're dealing with money, but you're also a social enterprise. How do you deal with trust and transparency that inside?
Yeah, so we try to actually make transparency a cornerstone of our existence, and we try to really walk the talk in this matter, and people, when they go through the projects that are available for investment in GoParity, for example, you're going to see everything about the financials, of course, but also about who are the founders. You get their profiles, their address, etc. But I guess the big lesson learned for us was in the beginning, when we had this idealized and we started, okay, let's launch our first project. We had done a couple pilots, and we wanted to fund some solar power installations in Portugal, and people would like register and say, okay, but first I want to see that it is built, and then I will lend you the money. And there was like this chicken and the egg problem.
Chicken and egg, yeah.
So we actually got a high net worth individual, let's say, to fund some of the first projects, and then we refinanced them via GoParity once it was there. And the lesson was about actually having visibility. Mm-hmm. And for example, one thing that we did was we now have we have more than 340 projects funded in 18 countries in Europe, Latin America, and Africa. And you can go to a map and you'll see the exact location of the projects you have invested in. And you can also track all the key metrics of impact from your project. So you know how many people you helped impacted, how many tons of CO2 you have avoided with your investments, how much clean energy you helped generate, how many jobs you helped create, all of this. So I guess in the end, it's visibility and tangibility. And of course, then there's hacks, like you have to be on the media. People get, whether we like it or not, it generates trust. That's how it goes.
It does. I mean, that sounds very amazing. And when you were saying visibility, we were just talking about how UX, for example, is very important in an app to make sure that everyone understands their portfolio of investments, where they are. And for example, when I was looking at Peru, I could see what projects you had there. So I think that was a very amazing. Well, I think there's so many faces here, and probably you're corporate innovators, social entrepreneurs, or someone that just wants to start a new enterprise. So can everyone just give one piece of advice to someone that wants to build today a successful social enterprise? Why would you say to this person? And we already talked about mental health and burnout, so that definitely can be inside the conversation. But what is the one piece of advice you would give this person?
So I would say approach the problems at the root of the problems and try to come with systemic solutions. But try to do it with a scale, with an ambitious view on trying to tackle this problem. Let's think about ending the people without housing, or just infantile cancer. So let's get this systemic approach and be ambitious on the solutions. And that's the way we're trying to approach our thematic investment, and have this systemic view and come up with different avenues to tackle the same problem, but with a clear definition on the final goal. And with that, there will come plenty of business opportunities, but with a consistency that will be able to attract you as well significant capital. But I think sometimes social companies tend to focus on the small problems very deeply. But I think the challenge here is to get them to scale, and that's what we're working on.
Amazing. What about you, Nuno?
Well, the thing we do more as entrepreneurs is errors. So, so I think one of the big pieces of advice that I now usually give is, as an entrepreneur, you get a lot of advice, and very often we are kind of we don't really take it serious, And then there's somewhere along the way, suddenly you think, oh shit, this is what that guy meant back then.
5 months ago,
I think one of the things we really need to take serious as an entrepreneur is talk to seasoned entrepreneurs, listen to their experience, actually try to make sense of what they're saying instead of just listening to answer to whatever they're saying. Let it sink, and eventually it will help you really avoid errors in the future.
I mean, that sounds amazing. That sounds like, for example, everyone here that is going to start a social enterprise needs a mentor, in a sense, or someone that can guide them through. So that's something very, very relevant. What about you, Aline?
So I'll have 2 points that I'll make. First of all, if you are a social entrepreneur, you are trying to solve a social challenge, and I think you really have to keep that as your guiding light. There's a lot of glorification around being a CEO and a founder, and it's really tough and not always easy. And I think what's really important is to make sure that you're not just creating a social enterprise to create an enterprise. Because I've very often seen people just reinventing the wheel over and over again. But the truth is, if your goal is impact, you're much better off with a partnership and partnering and doing what you're best at and finding those who can complement you. So if your goal is impact, I really would advise on that front to be careful, to not try and create something to create, but to create something with the end goal in mind. And the other point I would say is patience, which I think is a problem in the startup world because we want fast returns, exponential growth. But in the social space, you need a bit more patience. Slow growth can actually generate much higher growth in the end. I remember knocking on the doors of corporations, organizations that were seeking as B2B clients, the World Bank, the UN, very bureaucratic mammoths, if you will. And after 3 years, we finally secured a deal with them. So patience is key. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Patience. Well,
yeah, Rafaela, can I just?
Yeah, of
I
course.
want to underline the part about collaboration. Like, this is the one single most disappointing thing that I have felt in the social impact landscape. It's that whenever we tried to collaborate instead of competing with potential, let's say, with potential competitor or platforms that would be seen as competitors, we never ever were successful. And we always tried to lead the dialogue and it just never happened.
And why do you think that's like today? I feel like nowadays people are super open to collaborate, but why do you think that's something that's still very ingrained in social entrepreneurs or maybe competitors?
Competition is it's just too ingrained in general in our world, in our society, and in the economy. It's not specific of this sector. Well, one would hope that this sector would be different, but it isn't.
Well, I think that's something that we need to change, definitely.
Definitely.
Paolo, I think you want
I
to
would
say.
like to disagree on that. So it's true that in the last 2 centuries, we've developed a society and an economy that is based in self-interest. And everything has to have some kind of utility. Everything is measured in monetary terms. And that's why competition is essential to the enterprises and the economy and so on. I think we all are here in order to talk about people and the human touch, no? And try to bring to the equations those other measures that are not monetary, and try to talk about empathy and virtue and social service, and try to preserve a planet and to leave a better heritage than the one we find. And for those things, I think the mindset and the mentality where we approach business and opportunities is a bit different. Is wider. Of course, we need to meet with the requisites of any enterprise or any business, but we tend to ask something else, which I think is critical for the future and for the world that we leave to our kids.
I mean, I love this
This
conversation.
is not disagreeing with me.
Well, no.
I think
This is
complete paradox.
sharing the
It's a-
vision.
yeah.
The thing is, what is happening in reality? Because I know, of course, that we are here for that, and that's why we exist, and that's why you exist. I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning how many of those around us are actually applying this, or is it mainstream already? Because I really don't think it is.
As I said earlier, no, it's still a tiny sector of the economy, a tiny fraction of the assets under management, but it's been very recent. The social construct, it takes centuries, and we've been only around for 10, 15 years.
Right.
Ronald Cohen tends to say that once we reach that tipping point, that 5-10% of the economy, then you create a narrative, a logic that it's hard to get out of it. And hopefully, the more people we try to apply this way of doing things and approaching businesses, the more people will be attracted to it, and the less people will be able to be left out.
Definitely.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
talking about vision, instead of talking about the past, talking about the future, how do you guys imagine the world and this space of social enterprises in 10 years? How do you think it's going to change? Do you think collaboration is still going to be an issue? What about mental health, burnout? How do we see this changing? And Aline, maybe if you want to start, or if you're still thinking about it.
I mean, I think this is still a new field with a lot of unanswered questions, and I think the competition concept is itself very nuanced and complex. I think it's great for social enterprises to compete with large corporations, but social enterprises amongst themselves, what is your end game is the main question, and if it's impact, then you're maybe better off eventually partnering, learning from the other. I think it's a very interesting topic. We will not be able to tackle it, I think, today. But I'm hopeful that we are living in the era of the conscious consumer, and that people are looking now for quality, pricing, and then, if they can, do some good in return. So that's positive. How that weighs into the rest of the world and what's going on in the world with climate change and conflict, I'm a little bit pessimistic. Sorry.
I think having both sides, definitely, it's very interesting. But about you, Nuno?
Yeah, I don't know what is going to happen, of course. None of us does, but I know what I would like to happen. I would like for social entrepreneurship not to need to be a concept anymore. I'd like for impact not to need to be a concept anymore. I would like for ethical banking not to need to be a thing anymore, because that would mean that it actually became mainstream. We only have ethical banks because we are accepting that the regular bank is not ethical, which is really, if you think of it this way, it's really painful. So if I can have a wish, that's it. Let's just make the terms go away by making it all go mainstream.
I love this inspirational scenario, and hopefully comes true. What about you, Pablo?
The same line. I hope that in the 6 years that we have now till 2030, we're able to get to a mass market, and all decisions are not taken just on risk and return, but we're able to find a way to factor in the social and environmental issues. So at the end of the day, to make a buying decision, an investment decision, a company decisions, we're able to factor in these three elements and get to something that is looking for the long term without leaving a worse heritage to the next generation. So we hope that we're working in that direction and we will achieve that tipping point and that mass market.
Amazing. And I know we're living in a world where everything is fast. We scroll everything. So I want everyone, the three of you, to give one thing you want to give to the audience. One final message in tweet style, 280 characters, no more, straight to the point. What is it that you want to give to this amazing audience?
Who's ready?
I can
think
start.
that. No.
Yeah. I think one message that usually we try to send out is, as citizens, we do have a lot of power, and that's why GoParity exists. It's by bringing together the power of many to make good things happen and to change the economy and the use of money. And the thing that I would say is, we might all be doing everything right, buy organic, recycle, reuse, everything. Until we change the way we use our money, nothing will change.
Amazing. Pablo.
So I would love you to think beyond money, your monetary terms. Think about arts, think about virtue, think about empathy, think about the human element, and how you can put it into play in every decision that you take. We typically think about our careers in the way that is more better in economic terms. I think it's more important to look for happiness and for people around you and take care of the community. So I would love you to factor that into your decision making.
Thank you so much. Annalene?
I think I would echo everything that's been said, and I would say that, today it is quite easy to be a responsible citizen. The information is out there, the resources, the era of the internet has opened so many opportunities. So as much as you can, try to go for the socially responsible, the local, the small mom and pop shop options, because there's a lot of work to do on a lot of levels in the world today.
Thank you everyone for coming, for listening to these amazing speakers and panelists, and I hope everyone learned so many things about this topic. So thank you so much.